When Scorsese first called out Marvel movies as vapid, I, unlike most people, didn't think he was being pretentious. I'm a contrarian, and I love to go against the crowd. Now that I heard John Oliver call out Marvel in one of his more recent episodes, I decided to give the other side of the coin. What Scorsese meant, or really what I inferred, was that Marvel movies, like any blockbuster, because they are a blockbuster and trying to appeal to a wide range of people, must be uncontroversial and therefore have a greater difficulty in saying anything profound. You can't talk about how the Republican Party is fascist when a third of people are, unfortunately, Republican. In fact, this is the reason you didn't see black people in anything but a servant's capacity in most films, because those films were also being sold in the South. All you got was light skinned Lena Horne, and her career didn't go very far. It's why I do believe in the marketplace of ideas, because of how scared the powers that be are of free discourse and the lengths they go to handicap it. For example, the Electoral College exists because conservative ideas are so terrible few people want to vote for them. And now we are seeing even the ability for an individual to vote taken away in the South like it had been for black people prior to the 60s. To get back to my main point, yes, it is true that large-scale movies must be to some extent shallow. So, in what ways can they be deep? Well, there are universal philosophical questions they can wrestle with. And you know what? While Scorsese might do smaller films, he never takes the opportunity to be political, which is the one advantage they have. He usually sticks to the human experience and how it's stretched and molded in a certain environment, in his case, Italian working class neighborhoods. This isn't an area smaller films have a monopoly on. Bigger films can most certainly touch on these topics. The reason the Joker in The Dark Knight was praised as such a fantastic villain is because he represented the cynicism most people on the bottom of society feel, as did Michael Keaton in Spider-Man Homecoming. Thanos in the MCU expressed the ecological fear many of us have about overpopulation and the consumption of resources. Thanos did something not too similar from the forced sterilization in India or the child policy in China, or at least his motivations were the same. And even on that occasion, they do get somewhat political. Black Panther might not have said the Republican Party is racist, but they at least acknowledged racism is still a problem in society, which unfortunately is still somewhat of a controversial thing to say. Just try talking to a Republican about modern day racism. And then there are other questions these films can raise. In The Dark Knight, the question of freedom versus security is raised, if not answered. In Captain America Civil War, the problem of accountability is again raised, unanswered. Of course, these films don't have to answer the questions. The fact that they raise them is good to get the audience thinking about issues deeper than they otherwise would. In Endgame, the importance of sacrifice is highlighted. The first time, to my knowledge, spoiler alert, several main characters in the film are killed off in any blockbuster film. Of course, we might be missing something here, which is the question if films should always inform and not just entertain. People got so upset by Scorsese saying Marvel wasn't art, I'm not sure if anybody stopped to think that maybe art can somewhat be brainless. The human brain, much like the human body, needs rest. You need films where you don't strain your frontal lobe. At times, a film should be utilized to educate just as any art form should. Picasso's Guernica, Billie Holiday with her rendition of Strange Fruit, Louis Armstrong's Black and Blue, even Norman Rockwell, who idealized the 1950s for many people, eventually recognized the trouble of the times and did some radical paintings that showed some of the brutality African Americans were facing. Just as some people seem to recognize the importance of art simply to exist for entertainment, So it confuses people who complain art is being too political, oftentimes just for having a black lead. But even more than that, the most beautiful pieces of art are political. Blues is a whole genre that exists as a form of social protest, whereas minstrelsy was pure entertainment that existed to dehumanize black people so they would be easier to murder. And so there is a dark side to entertainment we must be wary of when you never use your brain. One of the greatest contributing factors to human suffering is human ignorance. Just as human ingenuity and intelligence is mankind's greatest salvation. So this whole debacle of how political or deep Marvel should be speaks to a larger question of how political and deep art should be. Sometimes it should be, and sometimes it shouldn't. There is a place for all stories and all paintings. Art can be like wildflowers, made no less beautiful because they signify nothing. A vegetable isn't more beautiful than a rose because it can be consumed and therefore has a purpose. A rose's purpose is to be consumed, that is, visually. To demand more from it would be to miss the point, the purpose of its existence. At least the purpose to most people. Then again, when something does have a deeper purpose than simply visual splendor, it does add to its quality. Many people marry for beauty, and we call those people shallow. And that's to some extent an apt accusation, since the length of a relationship should be founded on more than a facade, which is no more useful than a house with a facade. If you want that relationship to develop, there must be more to it. If we were to weigh the value of two pieces of art, or two relationships, wouldn't the better alternative be one that is both beautiful and informative rather than just one or the other? Imagine if words had no more meaning than the chirping of birds. Some human voices might still be beautiful, but part of what makes human language beautiful is the meanings it conveys. One other thing is the purpose of stories is to share experience, even the same experience repeatedly in new ways. Indiana Jones and Iron Man are both action movies, and you feel the same emotion, excitement, in both movies. And yet you would never say the films are the same movies. What's new and interesting about each movie is how they accomplish their goal. The movie is both educational and entertaining, and it couldn't be entertaining if, say, Iron Man wasn't telling an action story in a different way. It's educational in the fact that it's introducing a new way to tell a story. If every action movie were Indiana Jones, we'd stop going to see them because we'd already seen that. Art is an exercise in human imagination and attempting to convey the same emotion in new ways. By doing so, it expands the human experience. Rap and rock and roll both can make you feel excited, and yet they do so in completely different ways. Blues and Irish music can both make you feel sad, again, in different ways. It's a bit like how you can enjoy different flavors of food, even though all those flavors are different. I'll end my video on this. Enjoy a movie for what it is and not how you'd like it to be. There is almost certainly another film that can appeal to your tastes if you look.